There are many great examples of characters in movies and TV shows going through a brilliant character arc that leads them from being the villain to becoming the hero, and vice versa. But of course, there are some characters that stay true to themselves throughout and remain a hero or villain. However, there are some fan-favorite heroes that actually started life in the development stage as a villain. In this video, we will take a look at 10 of these heroes that were supposed to be villains, and why that all changed. Let's get going! There are plenty of things to love about Stranger Things, but if there was one character who we weren't expecting to steal our hearts at the beginning of the show, it's Steve Harrington.
Ahoy, ladies! I didn't see you there. Would you guys like to set sail on this ocean of flavor with me? I'll be your captain.
Steve, who is played by actor Joe Keery, was initially brought in to be your typical run-of-the-mill douchebag, and was meant to be one of the show's primary human antagonists, and was initially meant to bite the dust by the end of season 1. However, it turns out we are not the only ones to fall for the charms of Joe Keery, as the show's creators, the Duffer brothers, found his performance far too charming to be axed in season 1. So instead, the Duffers gave the character a brand new arc, allowing Keery to really shine in the role, and to let Steve grow into the bat-wielding ice cream scooper with awesome hair that we all know and love. Speaking of Stranger Things though, while Billy does remain one of the show's antagonists, the actor who plays him actually asked the Duffers to add in a few more scenes to give the character a more complicated and sympathetic backstory, so he could be a little less one-dimensional. When it comes to Pixar heroes, there aren't many bigger and better than Woody in Toy Story, and while he and Buzz had their initial feud in the first movie, they soon became thick as thieves and the ultimate leaders of their little plastic family. However, the initial concept of Woody was very different, and was much closer to the villainous prospector from the second movie, with him even originally being a murderer. Early concepts of Woody included a creepy ventriloquist dummy who is ready to haunt your dreams, and the first test screening shown to execs had Woody throwing Buzz out the window while the rest of the toys looked on in horror. The test screening, which has now gone down in Pixar lore as Black Friday, was poorly received and horrified the execs in the room, with the movie being put on hold. But after some rewrites, they eventually settled on the heroic Woody that we all know and love. Woody isn't the only Disney character that started off life as the villain, with Frozen's Elsa also initially intended to be the movie's main evil antagonist. In Hans Christian Andersen's original fairy tale, The Snow Queen, the character is the titular self-proclaimed evil Snow Queen who uses her power to rule with an army of snow beasts. Disney initially planned to provide a more faithful adaptation of the story and have Elsa as the villain, and early storyboards show her as an almost Cruella de Vil type character. The story would have seen Elsa left at the altar on her wedding day before freezing her own heart so she would never love again. Yikes. However, just like in the final version of the movie, Hans would have revealed himself as the actual villain, with Elsa eventually redeeming herself during the last moments. But this was all changed as the producers didn't feel that there was enough of an emotional connection with the character. Calling John Hammond the hero of Jurassic Park might be a stretch, but it's hard to hate the character, especially seeing as he's played by actor and brother to wildlife legend David Attenborough. However, in the book by Michael Crichton, Hammond is a much more sinister character with some pretty nefarious character motives, and he ultimately finds himself getting devoured by a group of dinosaurs, with the movie version also initially meant to follow a similar fate. Attenborough's version of the character, though, is a lot softer and more eccentric than his novel's counterpart, and feels more like a reckless dreamer than a sinister player, and he thankfully makes it out of the movie alive. If there's one thing everyone knows about Matilda, it's that she's a sweet and innocent bookworm. But according to author Roald Dahl's personal papers, Matilda was meant to be anything but sweet and innocent. And instead of being a nice, kind-hearted person, she was meant to be terribly unruly and a vindictive prankster, with her even supposed to die at the end of the book. Of course, this changed over time, with Matilda becoming the character we know her to be and her getting her happy ever after ending with Miss Honey. For anyone who watched How to Train Your Dragon 2, you will know that one of the major story beats is Hiccup reuniting with his long-lost mother, Valka. Now, I don't know about you, but I was half expecting it to be revealed that she was the movie's true antagonist. And while this may be down to some unresolved trust issues, there is some good reasoning behind it. That's because in the early drafts of the movie, Valka was indeed supposed to be the movie's sympathetic antagonist who believed that humans could not be trusted and that dragons needed to be protected from them. This would have then led her to attempting to take the dragons away from the village of Burke before fighting with Hiccup over who is in the right, with Hiccup presumably winning. However, this was changed with the movie's villain eventually being Drago Bloodfist, who wanted to force the dragons to fight in his army. Now, calling Jesse Pinkman a villain would be a great stretch, so much so that I'd probably pull a muscle. But I think we can all agree that Jesse isn't the heroic or virtuous character at the start of the series like he is at the end, and his arc as the show's hero runs parallel with Walt's descent into villainy. While it is impossible to imagine the show now without Aaron Paul as Jesse and his constant use of the word bitch, the character was originally meant to bite the bullet in Season 1, Episode 9, with Jesse's death being the main reason why Walt keeps on cooking. However, the writer's strike, which stopped the script from being written, saved Jesse from his fate and kept the character around for the long haul, and even allowed him to be the sole protagonist in the spin-off El Camino. Ironically, Tuco Salamanca was supposed to be the show's big bad, but actor Raymond Cruz found the role exhausting and decided to leave, paving the way for Gus Fring to fill his shoes. Moving to Buffy the Vampire Slayer now.
The Slayer.
Yeah, that's me.
If you're a fan of the show, you will definitely know Spike all too well, with him being one of the show's recurring characters. However, Spike was originally supposed to only last 5 episodes, with him set to be killed by Angelus, and Whedon was dead set on killing the character and making him as evil as possible. The audience had a different idea and wanted to keep him around for the long haul, and even though Whedon was still adamant on killing Spike off, reportedly not jokingly saying to actor James Marsters, "I don't care how popular you are, kid, you're dead. You hear me? Dead? Dead!" Spike's popularity kept him in the show and gave him some complexity. For anyone who has seen the brilliant, the first few seasons anyway, British superhero comedy Misfits, you will know that the gang is made up of a ragtag group of superpowered anti-heroes. Out of the group, Yuan Rion Simon is arguably the most virtuous, but Simon was actually intended to be the show's prime villain, which the rest of the heroes would have to team up against and kill. But because Rion was so good, the show's creator, Howard Overman, couldn't face killing him off, so decided to flip the script, and instead made him one of the most heroic members of the group. Because, let's face it, you can't have Nathan be your most virtuous character. Of course though, Rion did get to play the part of a despicable villain as Ramsay Bolton in Game of Thrones. Bob's Burgers is one of the funniest and arguably most underrated animated comedies around, with the Belcher family being eccentric and hilarious in equal measure. However, the initial concept for the show was a lot darker when first pitched by Lauren Bouchard, with the family actually being a bunch of cannibals who sell burgers made from human flesh, all with punny names. Bouchard had a history of working on darker and edgier comedies on Adult Swim, but upon pitching to Fox, learned that it wasn't a necessary feature, and ended up dropping the cannibal element, but still keeping a reference to it in the pilot. And finally, Jane the Virgin has many colorful fan-favorite characters in the show, but none more so than Petra Solano. The character starts off as an out-and-out villain in the series, before having a great redemptive arc that made her one of the show's best characters.